What's up, guys, and welcome back to another Odd Popcorn for That review. I'm Chris,
I'm Nick.
and today we're talking about the new movie They Cloned Tyrone. This dropped on Netflix the other day, and this is the directorial debut from Jewel Taylor. Two directorial debuts this week. But yeah, really unique movie. I liked it a lot. What were your thoughts on it?
I liked it a lot too. I thought it was pretty funny and it's kind of dark. Obviously, it's got a message to it, and uh, I really like Jamie Foxx's character as the pimp, Slick Charles.
Mm-hmm.
He was really funny. John Boyega was really good, and
Yeah, this is a
yeah,
unique performance for John Boyega for sure.
yeah,
I mean, I haven't seen like I know he was there was something about Detroit. I can't remember the movie about like a shooting in Detroit or something where another serious role of his that I heard he had some good good acting chops before. Not that Star Wars was bad, but this is just a very different direction for him to go in.
mhm,
And an American accent through the whole thing, so he had to kind of. But yeah, and the three main roles are kind of like very intentionally stereotypes. Um, So you've got a drug dealer, a pimp, and a hoe,
yep,
and they're very much like stereotypical. Uh, and it's kind of funny how like you can't really tell the time period we're in. It's almost like maybe an alternate reality or something because it's a little
yeah,
bit current, maybe a little bit futuristic, but at least a little bit like current day kind of technology, but also like retro vibes to the whole thing too, like almost 1970s
yeah,
vibes at the same time. So that I thought that was an interesting like creative choice on it. But the writing on this is so solid. Like this is some of the best comedic writing and just writing in general. Um, like I've seen in a while. Like it's just really tight and the plot is super unique to me. I mean, I can't think of anything I can directly compare this to. Um, it
yeah,
does give me a little bit of Get Out vibes when you look at the whole picture of the movie, but it's not really a Get Out. This movie doesn't really remind me of Get Out. It's
mhm,
just got some of the similar themes in a way. Trying to think of anything I can. Well, I'll warn you when we get to spoilers, but essentially you've got this drug dealer played by John Boyega who is dealing with this like chronic grief of his younger brother who was killed by a police officer and lives his life in this very routine way, does the same thing every day, and just hustling, slinging drugs, and then he he goes out seeking money from I guess that he's owed by this pimp Slick Rick played by Jamie Foxx
Slick Charles,
and or Slick Rick.
Slick Rick's the rapper.
I knew that was going to come out at least one time. Slick Charles, and we almost get into spoilers early on. I guess this is a light spoiler, so
Yeah, it's the beginning of the
go
movie.
watch the movie.
Yeah,
Uh, but right early on, like he does get the money that he needs from Slick Charles, but and this is right after um, Yo-Yo is the name of the prostitute working
mhm,
for Slick Charles, and she's just stormed out. So she sees not Tyrone. I kept expecting his name to be Tyrone Fontaine.
I did too. Fontaine, yeah,
Uh, she sees Fontaine going in there, so she's sort of like a witness to this happening. And then when he leaves, he's like insulted a rival gang, I guess,
yeah. I
a
think
rival
he
drug
like
dealer,
yeah, he like robbed the
hit
drug
a dude
dealer that was on his like oh my gosh, I can't think of
on
the
his
word.
beat, I guess, or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever you want to
just
call
his territory. There we go.
it. Yeah, and he like hits the guy with his car and injures him. So this has caused like a rift there, and so they find him at that spot where Slick Charles is, and they gun him down in the first few minutes of the movie, and so he's there dead in his car, and then John Boyega wakes up again. It's Tyrone, I mean not Tyrone. Fontaine wakes up again, no memory of the night before. Starts his normal routine of buying a lottery ticket, and he buys a 40 of some kind of beer, and he has to pour a little bit in this homeless guy's cup, and same routine every day. And then when he goes to get his money from Slick Charles again, obviously that's when things start to unravel because we just saw the guy get murdered, and Slick Charles just saw the guy get murdered. He already came for the money, has no memory of that. So obviously something crazy is going on. And then he remembers that he saw a guy that kind of looks like him. I don't know how much he noticed that, but he sees a guy wounded, hobbling down the road, and black van, I think,
like
or some kind of
SUV. Yeah,
SUV or something. Grabs that guy, puts him in the vehicle, and skirts away. And he kind of puts that aside in his mind, but now he's thinking about that. And that SUV is parked outside of this trap house. So they go together to this trap house, and inside this trap house is an elevator. And they just calmly walk on the elevator. And Slick Charles is the only one that's like, "Are you, like, is anybody noticing that
right.
an elevator in a trap house is?" Uh, but they end up going on that elevator, and they go down, and there's like a crazy scientific laboratory down there, and I can't remember what they see at first, but do they see clones the first time they go down there, or do they just see like scientists and
No, they just see like a scientist down there, and then they see like
okay,
some like lab material, just basic stuff like flasks and beakers and
so they don't
some
fully know
powder.
what's going on yet then off the
Yeah.
first time, um, but they know something is up. So this is not the time. I'm getting the timelines kind of confused. This is not the time where they confront the doctor, where Jamie Foxx where Slick Charles confronts uh, the scientist or whatever, and with a gun and all that. Is this not that
Yeah,
yet?
no, it is because there's like, it's like a white
Okay.
guy who has an afro down there, and they're holding him
Yeah.
hostage. And you know what? He does see a clone down there because finds his dead body that's like in this lab towards
That's the
the end
last
of
thing they
it.
see.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the last thing they see, and then they got to get out of there. But yeah,
yeah.
they're asking the scientist questions, and then there's some white powder down there that Jamie Foxx or that Slick Charles sees, and thinks it's cocaine, snorts it, and then he's laughing hysterically, and the gun goes off on this scientist, so he's dead immediately. Didn't intend to do that, and that's the thing that sets alarms off, and they got to hurry up and get out of there. Well, when they send people back there, uh, when Fontaine's character brings a team back there to investigate and everything, there's not even an elevator there anymore.
Mhm.
So people are starting to question his like sanity now, and so he just I think this is the point where he just decides to try to just go on with his life, right? And like,
No, I think
or am I skipping ahead a little
you're
bit?
skipping ahead because they're trying to discover and figure out what's going on. So like I think they go and eat some. They're at this like place eating chicken, and like everybody in there is laughing, and they kind of realize, oh, something's in this chicken, like that's making everybody
Yeah,
act
Slick
like
Charles is the one
everything's
that realizes.
hilarious. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then Yo-Yo kind of, you see the manager obviously running the place. Maybe is a little sketchy. He's also a white guy that has an afro, and she starts kind
Oh,
of like playing him and
seducing him. Yeah,
seducing him, and then they go back into his office, and she's kind of playing with him and be like, "Oh, maybe get me some chicken, and I'll,
she gives him quite a list of things
and
that
I'll."
she would like.
And she said she'd give him some Shalimar, which I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
Uh,
she's got a bunch of funny little euphemisms for different sex acts all throughout this thing that I
yeah,
don't even know what. Like gave him a David Carradine. So I
yeah,
was like, you gotta be kidding me out here.
and but in that office too, there's like a whole bunch of CCTV cameras. On
And the boss has the afro too, by the way. The
Yeah,
white another white guy with an afro. But yeah, the CC cameras. Yeah.
and it's basically she like looks at all the screens and sees that it's just like all over town and all these different places, just watching basically the entire town.
Hmm.
And then I
Yeah,
think
they've got the whole town surveilled.
yeah, and I think the manager maybe says something that Fontaine recognizes because that homeless guy that he's always giving beer to is always giving like these one-liners.
It seems like he knows something that's up.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
definitely has to because I forget what it is. It's like something is greater, straighter is greater or something like that.
Straighter is greater when there's commercials for like a hair straightening
Oh,
or
that's
a
right. Yeah, yeah.
relaxer, a hair straightening product, and they're trying to figure out what's the significance of straighter is greater. But he says a lot of things that like make him seem like almost like an oracle or
Mhm.
something like that. He has to speak in like riddles and codes, but he's really just like a drunk. But he does know something's up, and they like ascertain from something he says that uh, something about you've got to get out of when you've got to get out of Babylon. They figure out that it's a church they need to go to, and he says whenever you got to get out of Babylon, where's the only place you can go? And it's like Mount Zion
Yeah.
Tabernacle, so out of Babylon into Zion. So they go to this church, and the podium is an elevator, I think, or something like that. Like the
Mhm.
podium lowers down, and that's when they find out like it's like their whole neighborhood is there's like an underground operation underneath the whole neighborhood. And what's the neighborhood called again? I can't remember.
Glenn.
the Glen,
Mhm.
like this fictional neighborhood, and so they find out like this is this is this huge facility, and they're running all these experiments on primarily black people that they've cloned, and there's tons of clones in there, but I mean they're just regular people, but some of them look we that's when we find out not only do some of them look like Fontaine, a lot of them look like Fontaine, but some of them even look like Slick Charles,
Mhm. And like
and
there's a bunch of like, key people cuz it's basically people that they keep cloning that disrupt the neighborhood and keep it how it is.
mhm. Yeah, and so there's like there's a scene where you're showing all this testing and stuff, like pitting two people against each other to make them fight, and making people watch different stimuli with like their eyelids clockwork oranged open,
Yeah.
and all these different like experiments and torture and all this craziness, and so they immediately start to try to like formulate a plan to get everybody out of here. Uh, but they end up in some part of the lab that's also like it's almost like there's like a nightclub in there or something.
Well, they take an elevator up because I think they get
Oh,
found
okay.
out, like an
Hmm.
alarm start going off, so they rush into an elevator, and the elevator comes up inside of a nightclub, and it's like playing this music that's making everybody spin in circles and stuff.
Yeah, they do a bunch of like mind control things, but one of them
Yeah.
is like they're using different types of music to control people's actions, and so everybody's dancing and having a good time, and then he controls people's actions to calm them down and make them whatever. But then ultimately, when our main characters leave, um, they change the music to make all of everyone in the club like go chase after them and I guess kill them, or I'm not sure. So they're all just it's almost like a zombie scene or something because they're all
Mhm.
chasing them down the road, and then all of a sudden everyone stops and to the point that everybody can get out of the car, and there's none of these people are doing anything anymore, and a car approaches. I think it's the SUV from earlier, and it's Kiefer Sutherland's character. I think his name is Nixon,
I
and
think so.
another kind of slightly older looking Fontaine clone whose name I can't remember, but they call him something else. And you immediately get the idea that this guy, though he is not the upper, like he says everybody's got a boss, but he's got a lot of power in this, at least over the Glen. This seems like maybe it's a
Mhm.
bigger project than this the Glen. It is a bigger project than this Glen, but he's like maybe over, in charge of this group, and this guy is just sinister, and he immediately exerts, shows the control he has, and he says this like this code phrase that will make the clones do whatever he wants, and he gets Fontaine to point a gun at Yo-Yo, and then he gets Fontaine to turn the gun around on himself and put it in his mouth, and he's yelling like he's about to make him pull the trigger, and it's all just to kind of prove the point that like you're not in control at all. We own you, and we designed you, and we designed you to be a drug dealer. We designed Slick Charles to be a pimp, and this is all like you just don't understand how important this is. But this actually um, keeps the country peaceful
Mhm.
somehow. Which I mean, obviously their reasoning is like completely jacked, but I don't even understand their make believe reasoning for why that would make things more peaceful or whatever. But somehow
Yeah.
this maintains order. You have to have the drug dealers and the pimps and the hoes. I don't know why that's the case, but so that's why they have these certain clones to just like maintain the status quo or whatever. And this is what I was talking about earlier when like Fontaine is just like, if that's the way it is, then I'll just continue on about my life and pretend like everything's normal, like he said, because this is obviously way bigger than us and we can't do anything.
Mhm.
But Yo-Yo doesn't feel the same way. So Yo-Yo's about to like write up this big. There's something about Yo-Yo where she's different than your average. Like
I don't think she's a clone. Is the
she's not a
thing. I think
clone.
she's just a person.
She is just a person, but there's something about her that's different. Like she's like trying to. She's always aiming for bigger things. She wants to like be an astronaut or write for a magazine or whatever. She's got a bunch of big ambitions,
Mhm.
and she writes this big like exposure piece on this underground, whatever you want to call this organization that's happening, and drops it in a mailbox to give to like the New York Post or the New York something,
Yeah.
some big publication. And she's spotted when she's doing that by another prostitute, and so her she gets called out, and that's enough for them to just nab her up real quick in the SUV, And so now it becomes a thing of she's in that place getting experimented on too. So now Tyrone's invested, but also the other thing that gets him
Fontaine.
invested is,
Yeah.
or Fontaine is invested now. But the other thing that gets him invested is there's this running thing through the whole movie as part of his routine that he always like makes food for his mom and knocks on the door and sees if she needs something to eat, and she never wants anything to eat. Like she's always like, "Oh, I'm full from that fish fry. I'm still full from that fish fry," or "No, I'm watching my stories right now. I can't,"
Hmm.
And it's like he never sees her, and after he realizes he's a clone and everything's fake and he's just running through the motions, he knocks on her door again, offers her some food, and she doesn't want anything. And he says, "Can you please just come to the door?" And he's like pleading with her to come to the door, and she won't. And he kicks the door in, and it's just a table with a tape recorder that's just like recording set on a loop of his mom saying these phrases that get her out of coming to the door to talk to him. And he just loses his mind. And this was I think that scene like stood out in my mind as some really great acting from John Boyega in that moment. Like he
Yeah.
put his all into this movie for sure. And you see a lot of range with him because at first he's a very like stoic, quiet, never happy, never smiling, just down to business drug dealer, and you see some range as over the course of the movie. But yeah, no, so now he's in, and um, so is Slick Charles, and Slick Charles just rounds up the whole neighborhood
Yeah.
essentially, and so they all come out in these like just a sea of amazing classic muscle cars and things like that. That was a great. He's like I brought the whole hood out,
Yeah.
and so they go in. I mean, it's gonna take an army, so they go in.
They raid the underground
Yeah,
science
and they're just
area, whatever.
wreaking havoc and smashing everything. And anyway, this all culminates with the standoff between Yo-Yo and Nixon. Well, Yo-Yo and Slick Charles and Nixon, and and the big culmination is it looks like he's got him cornered. He's got Slick Charles under his foot, and he's got a gun on. He's been able to get Yo-Yo to surrender, drop her gun, and he's about to kill her, and she's able to buy a little bit of time, and then we find out that was a clone, Slick Charles on the ground, and he gets capped in the head by Slick Charles. So that's the end of Nixon, but the end of the movie is essentially like all this chaos just leads to just a ton of naked clones just stumbling out of like random places, churches, and random places all over the country. So this is obviously like a multifaceted operation,
Hmm.
but they've just been putting this like mind control, or like not mind control, but like this powder that makes you real docile and susceptible to what's the word I'm looking for? Like real suggestible,
Yeah.
uh, I guess. And so they put that in the Kool Aid and like
Chicken, the
grape drink,
yeah, yeah.
hair straightener, and fried chicken.
But like
So obviously
there's a
they're
whole
like,
bunch of stuff. They've got like a whole like cereal. There's a whole like warehouse that they show
yeah,
them packing all this different stuff in. But
but they
yeah.
are very much targeting, uh, black people in America, and while all that's going on with Nixon, the other story that's happening is the like older uh, clone of Fontaine that's wearing a suit that was kind of like Nixon's right hand man, I guess.
It was like his bodyguard, yeah.
Yeah, he has a one-on-one fist fight uh, with our main Fontaine, and it seems like he's trying specifically not to be lethal, and he ends up knocking him out and drags him to this room where we meet elderly Fontaine, which is like the original Fontaine, not a
Yeah.
clone, the original
He's
Fontaine, and he's actually like the head scientist behind this whole thing, and
yeah.
he saw this as a necessary evil in response to the police murdering his brother, and so his very convoluted, not to say that the movie's convoluted, but like in his mind, his very convoluted idea of how this is justified to make a deal with the devil like this is, this thing with his brother, and Fontaine is like, yeah, but he wouldn't want that, and he's like, well, you never really knew him, yours is just I gave you my thoughts, but I spared you the. And he goes through the story of watching
Yeah,
his brother die,
and it seems
and like
like the whole goal is because he's got like different tubes lined up, and it's like starts with a black male, and they progressively get lighter until it's a white guy with blonde hair and blue eyes, and it kind of seems like that's the whole goal is to, I guess, turn all black
make
people into white
everyone white.
people, and he's like, so nothing like this will ever happen again is kind of his like
Yeah,
justification.
he says assimilation is better than annihilation. So
Mhm.
essentially, like, give it up. People, racists are going to be racist forever, and they're always going to be killing us. So let's just selectively breed ourselves into into non-existence.
Yeah.
And but they make a joke about like how we're almost there, except for the hair. The hair is really stubborn. It's really
Yeah,
hard to get
yeah.
the hair right.
That's why
So
all
that's
those
why all
white
these white
people
guys
have
are.
afros.
Yeah. Uh, and so that's the way that's the parallel I draw with Get Out is that this is all
Mhm.
like a experiments on black people and uh
It's kind of the
but yeah,
opposite because Get Out was like white people going into the bodies of black people,
right, right.
but
But yeah, it's
similar
crazy that
enough.
like
Yeah.
the ultimate villain kind of is the original Fontaine, and he
Yeah.
went into it with like the right kind of like good intentions, but really, really, made the wrong decisions along the way, and at the very end, not the very very end, but he uses that code word that we heard earlier from Nixon's character to control the clone of himself that's standing next to his, the original Fontaine, and has him shoot him in the head. So that's the end of original Fontaine. And you assume like the two main guys have been, so it's just a matter of time now before the whole thing starts crumbling down. They got to explain themselves about all this, but there's more work to be done. So at the very end of the movie, we see our main three characters kind of one at a time decide they're all going to go off to Yo-Yo's initial idea was to go off to Memphis and start a new life for herself or whatever, and now they're all going off to Memphis to see if they can kind of. They're almost like a Scooby Doo team going to bust the next cloning operation up.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're like trying to tie in this to a sequel or something
I
like
don't think
that, but
so.
it
Yeah.
does give you a little idea of where they're going from here. But yeah, that was a solid movie, man. I recommend that to almost anybody.
I did like it quite a bit. I do have one pretty big gripe with it though,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the fact that they established that keyword and it like incapacitates the clones and makes them do whatever the guy who is controlling it says until he says relax or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the kind of thing that like when the laboratory is getting raided and stuff, there's obviously a PA system shouting like everybody go to the nearest exit. Somebody could
Yeah,
have easily said that code word into the PA system, and then every single one of those people that were clones would have frozen.
I
and
did not think about this
and
because
also when John
yeah,
Boyega Fontaine, when he says it to, why did he not freeze? Like it shouldn't matter who's saying it. It's if the clone hears those key words. So he says it, and he should have frozen as well as. But yeah, that's my
because
only gripe with the movie.
I hadn't been paying attention to how far into the movie I was or how long it was or anything. I didn't know that it was necessarily coming to a close. Like it felt like it was roughly coming to a close, but I thought there was maybe enough time for them to do something where like I didn't think about the way you thought about it, like where they could have just set it over top of the speakers and been done
Yeah,
with it. Uh, I mean, we don't know what percentage of those people were clones, but still, it would have
yeah, it still would have
certainly
helped.
not hurt.
Yeah.
But when he said that code word, I'm thinking, well, that I figure that doesn't work for clones to say it to other clones because otherwise the other clones would just be saying that to each other all the time,
But
right?
that's the thing is what I'm saying is like even when he says it, he should have frozen up too, because it shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be dependent on if you say it, you're not affected by it. It's you
That's what
hearing
I
the
mean. If it
words.
if
Yeah.
it works that way, where a clone can say it to another clone, then what would stop clones from just controlling each other all the time and they go into complete chaos?
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't think it would. I thought he was about to find out the hard way that it doesn't work like that, and either get
Mhm.
shot again or. Oh, and we didn't say this, but there is like an elaborate kind of scheme that is the way that they finally get in because they figure out that they're surveilling the whole town, and so they make this plan kind of covertly to that we're not privy to at first either. But the idea is he's gonna go have a meeting with this rival gang that shot him up in the beginning of the movie. Am I right about that part?
Yeah.
I think that's the yeah. He's gonna go have a conversation with them and like very publicly like assault the guy who he hit with the car earlier in the movie and throw a wad of cash in his hand and say he wants to meet with the guy. And all this is being surveilled, you know. And so they know where the meeting's going to be, they know when it's going to be and everything. And they go to the meeting and it's all like a scripted out thing where he's like, "You're telling me I'm supposed to believe that they're making clones of everybody," and blah blah blah, a bunch of Bill Nye looking. And anyway, he's like, "Man, you made the wrong decision coming to me for this," and shoots him in the shoulder. And it's a very intentional, like non-lethal wound, but it's supposed to look like he's dead. And they drop him off on the side of the road. SUV comes, picks him up, puts him in a bag, make another clone of him, but he's not dead. So all he has to do is like sneak into their headquarters in a body bag essentially, and wake up and unzip himself and
Then
that. But I
everybody
thought
else
that was a clever,
infiltrates. Yeah.
like the way they handle that whole thing in the movie is even more clever than just what I'm saying. Just like all the visual gags with like all the prostitutes pretending to still be prostituting,
Mhm.
especially I thought was funny because they're just like pretending. I better not make any of those motions on YouTube, but
Right.
they're pretending to do various things. Uh, but yeah, what else, Ray? What else
I
is there
think that's
about
about
this
it.
thing?
Yeah. It was a
So
good movie.
what would you
I would
give it?
recommend it. I'd probably give it like a 7.5. I enjoyed it pretty good. I had no idea what it was about going into it. Obviously, I figured there'd be some kind of cloning situation, but yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I'd go even a little higher. I'd give it probably 8.5, man.
Yeah.
It's a real good one. For me, two great movies this week, and very different from each other, but yeah, I like them both a lot. So yeah. So uh, what is the next movie? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is the next movie we're
Yeah, I
watching.
think so. Yeah.
That'll be coming out soon. But yeah, as always, remember to hit like below. That helps us out a lot. And let us know in the comments below if you've seen this movie. It's available on Netflix, so free to watch. And when you watch it, come back and tell us what you thought about it. And remember to share this with your friends and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Would love to have you. And yeah, thanks for watching as always, guys. And we will see you in the next one.
We'll see ya.